leaders, coaches, we as teachers, to Rita's point, like we probably should be better connected to um, what the individuals are looking to solve for versus simply just sharing a whole heck of a lot of content. And we've learned that, like, once you understand what that is, then you can start building the criteria or the curriculum to helping them get to where they want. And we think that I would say, I'm saying we, by meaning developing the next leaders, our firm, we think that that is the path toward getting our why connected to making this place better today and going forward. And that's to the point or to the question you shared.
Yeah, it was kind of pithy question, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
Warren Buffett repeatedly talks in his talks about the importance of surrounding ourselves with positive people. And I wonder, Colin, if you could address with what you do, and I've seen you on YouTube and up in front of people so many times. How do you address people about the importance of getting out there with people that are the geese flying in the same direction?
Hmm. Um, the very large majority of our training is focused on salespeople.
Right.
Um, yeah, and what's interesting is salespeople. I'd imagine that most people from the outside looking in would think that they are a positive bunch, but the reality is they are as positive as the products, the product's competitiveness, and the compensation they get to sell those products. In other words, Rita, and Don, what I'm saying is that, like, the people that we're training are positive as long as everything's working in their favor. Like
Oh,
they need, yeah, yeah. So that yes. So one of the things that we suggest to them is, um, regardless of the compensation and regardless of the products you have, and this goes back to this word why, is when you are striving to um, improve upon your core mission, they're the
mhm.
things where happiness comes from. Happiness does not come from selling more or making more money, although lots of people believe that on the surface and maybe even a little bit deeper than the surface. But the reality is happiness comes from, like, that true happiness. And maybe that this is what you're asking, that like being around those people who are truly happy are the people who are all working toward a mission, all pulling in the same direction, or all flying in the same direction, to use the geese idea that you mentioned just a second ago. But yeah, so of course, I totally agree with Warren Buffett's point. We want to be around as many positive people as possible, but that's not going to be the reality. It's just not. So how do you get people, like, how do you get the people around you to start thinking positively so they can take in the direction or the leadership or the ideas that you're trying to lay upon them? It's by helping them connect to, like, this why that we have as an individual and how that connects to the group, and then pushing forward. That is, like, literally the answers we've seen work really well.
Well,
Wow.
that makes perfect sense. And I think when we're looking at getting back to why, it's a matter of commitment too. It's a matter of dedication. That
Mhm.
you're searching for answers. You accept what you have, but know there's more that you could have. And I
Right.
think that's why anything we do, we have to realize there's going to be people we don't know that show up. There's things we're going to learn that we needed that didn't know before. And again, I look at why as questioning and searching to improve. What's your thoughts, Rita?
Well, I agree with you. We're always fine tuning and upskilling today. If we don't, then we won't stay relevant and we'll be left behind. Um, I feel strongly about upskilling right now. And also, Colin, what do you do with those? Well, first of all, I'd like you to address the concept of buy-in, because I've always felt that it's a little silly to say as a leader, "Oh, well, we'll present it in our staff development, our L&D, and then we'll just hope everybody buys in." Well, I have
Mhm.
an issue with that. I don't think most people buy into anything unless they see a purpose or a relevance for themselves. And there you are, Don. Ah,
Well,
now we're all there, and Colin's in the sandwich.
I don't know
So
how I did it, but I never stopped trying. So
Did
I'm
you
putting
ever
my
see us
ego on the air.
flustered? No.
I think
We
we
always
planned it just so me and Rita would look better when we showed up. But
no, it's
anyway,
all right.
uh,
I was always a late bloomer, Don. So anyway, if we can go back to that question, I think it is pretty powerful. Do you remember what I even said? Oh yeah, I was talking about buy-in because I'm always trouble when I see as a former principal and all other roles that I had. Wherever I go, people are always talking about, oh, they'll buy in. We'll do a little staff development, and this is where I see it's been vertical, where the leader has his or her their mission, and it comes from on high and trickles down, and so we expect people to buy in. But if we were to go with a horizontal shared leadership, I think we have more possibility of people going in the same direction. What are your thoughts, Colin and Don, about that notion of buy-in in terms of whose why is it?
that's a great
Mm.
question, because that has a lot to do with credibility, with
Yes.
relationship, right? If
Right.
someone who you really trust says why, you're more than happy to answer that question. If it's
Right.
somebody, a stranger you don't trust, why would I share that with this person? So it's a
Yes.
lot about openness
Mhm.
to why. And I think once people determine that when I say why to this person, the answer is always what I need.
Uh-huh.
And when I say why to that person, I've got to go into explanation just so they can be conversational about it. So, if you're looking at why as a climbing tool,
Right.
is the ability to challenge yourself first. And then when you can't figure it out, challenge something or some other source of information.
Mhm.
Because in today's world, like I mentioned, it's like musical chairs, less chairs and faster, right?
Right.
You don't
Mhm.
have as many opportunities to be comfortable and to allow your own time frame to guide your evolution. Now everything is in total dynamic change and it's only
Right.
speeding up. So I think that's the reason why people have to question, and not only question the future and new things, but especially old things that don't work for them anymore.
Right.
Right?
Same thing, same results.
Why am I using this at this point in my life?
Right.
Why aren't I upgrading? Why? Clean out your closet yourself first and get everything in order and then use everything else to build on that. But if you're building on sand instead of rock,
Yeah, right.
you're bringing people into it yet because everything ripples back and forth. So you're bringing out a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily serve others, right?
Yeah.
And that's why
Mm.
I think the show works is because it's what's in it for them,
Yeah.
right? And if they're not covered, we shouldn't be covered. I always look at it like a serving line. You don't somebody is just serving them. You make sure everybody eats, gets through the line, and usually you never get through the line. And that's where these comments are so important. And hopefully, well, Christine Feedy's here. I'm doing aligns with my why, but it still feels like a lot.
Right. Right.
I agree that the assessment of salespeople is correct. I used to be like that, but now understand that happiness is an inside job. So true.
So
Omar,
good.
exactly. Don, where's
John,
the
where's your hat?
deal? I had the hat on. And said, one day, show everybody you got real hair, whatever you say. And that's why the hat's not here today. So, with that, Colin, we can each see
Yeah.
each other. We're on equal footing.
All
Right.
It's a new
right.
kickoff.
Tom, what do you think about any parts of that multi-phase question?
Mm. One of my least favorite expressions, I'm talking like it's right down the bottom of my least favorite things, is the reason why we do it this way is because it's the way we've always done it.
Yes.
And so that's one of those ones that is like as harsh on the ears as it gets. And one of the ones that I think we all need to keep challenging.
Right.
In particular, if it's working slowly, or obviously if it's not working at all, like, well,
Yeah.
it's still kind of working. Why should we? Well, because we can kind of do it better. That's one. And then I'll share another story. And this is to Ree's point about the multifaceted question we have there. Nick Saban, who you all, or some may know, I'll tell you who he is. He's the head coach of Alabama football. He was also head coach of LSU football, Miami Dolphins. He's had great success in the college ranks. And one of the things that he says, I'll start with this. One of the things he's been able to do that very few human beings in this world have ever done is
Right.
consistently get 18 to 24-year-old, 18, 23, 22, 23-year-old kids to be where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, doing what they're supposed to be doing, and how they're supposed to be doing it. And he does this year in and year out with a changing crop of people. It's a pretty amazing thing if you give the man credit for this. But here's something he says. He says every freshman who comes in gets the same conversation that a sophomore, junior, and senior gets. I ask them, what are your individual goals? And then how do they connect to the overall team's goals?
Bingo.
He has a conversation with each one of them and truly understands those things. And he says, okay, so my job now is to hold you accountable to achieve those goals. So you sure you want to achieve those goals? Because I am going to hold you accountable to achieving those goals because you told me they were really important to you and to helping us achieve the overall team goal. And so he says, I get them all the help they can to achieve their goals that connect to team goals, and then we as a group. And that's how he's been able to do it. That's his answer to that like consistent success that Alabama football has had under his leadership.
So organizational structure is what's really important, whether we're talking about the sales world that you're leading in, or education, where I've been and still am, and Donald, all that you've learned all these years. Organizational culture is really, really important. And I think we're going through a phase where we're seeing that the lack of empathy and compassion at some of these higher levels is being detrimental to us in our organizations, whether it's schools or anything else. So how important is organizational culture, Don and Colin, in terms of helping people either find their why, shift their why, or maybe it's not working anymore and find another way to go?
I think that's an excellent lead into what's really happening in organizations is they're getting disrupted,
Yes.
and everything's going decentralized,
Yes.
right? As much as it can. And that's what this show makes so much sense is you have 40, 50 people, knowledge sharing across everybody, through everybody, with everybody. And everybody here is a front door to their network that influences that.
Right.
So how much of what you have to say that's important to say can you get as many people who are aligned already with what you have to say in
Right.
the same place at the same time for an hour? You know,
Mhm.
this show at times gets 20 hours of view time just during the show and 300 comments. So
Mhm.
so it
Yeah.
shows the vehicle is there now for the first time.
Yes.
How is someone going to leverage it? And
Mhm.
everybody needs to go one against groups instead of one against one. But I do agree with Colin in that everything today is based on quality communication if you're going to be successful. You know, with the
Mhm.
dialogue you have with your team, the dialogue you have with your vendors, the dialogue you have with your investors, the dialogue you have with your media. And how do you get through unnecessary filters that dilute that
Yes.
message or restrict that message?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
that's peer to peer, shoulder to shoulder, and it's
Right.
there. LinkedIn is giving you a free network, a channel, a
Mhm.
broadcast within their whole 900 million organization. And people can post about their last trip to the restaurant or a flower, and that's great. But how much influence is that going to be if you truly want to be an influencer, right? If you're just socially conscious and aware, then that's great to do whatever you want to do. But I think people who come to this show, and I know myself, I know there's a better place, and I know it's very easily accessed, but it needs to be collaborative and collective for it to have scale and be duplicatable. So, you know, I think getting back to your organizational question, uh, why not? You're working for yourself no matter who's signing the check. So let's get that clear. No one's got a 30-year plan for you. No one stays up at, how we're going to get this person a quality retirement. So the point is what are you doing for yourself right
Yeah.
now with your voice, and with the amplification that even a show like this, a comment will be seen by so many people. We're talking among ourselves, but we're being seen by so many more people that will never know, but the ripple effect can take over. So I'll turn it over to you, Colin, to say what's your thoughts towards Rita's question or my answer.
A great, I'm going to answer Rita's question this way. I have been part of an organization with an amazing culture. And I'll tell you how I know in just a second. I've also been part of an organization where the culture has been less than amazing, maybe even, toxic at certain places at certain points.
Right.
How I know it was amazing is because I felt amazing when I was there. Everyone's working towards the same thing,
Yes.
and we're all connected to each other. It was a sales organization, and every one of us wanted to do more sales than the other person, but every one of us would drop everything we were doing to help someone else get to their highest level. It was literally happening. It was, so I've been part of that. How you know you're part of an amazing culture is because you're part of an amazing culture. It's like one of those things you have to be a part of to truly understand. And the other side of it is when you're part of a really poor culture. The difference, and I've studied this long hours. I've spent studying this, hundreds of hours studying this, is when people are driven towards a singular mission, you get an amazing culture. You feel like you are part of something. When you are all working towards your own individual goals, it feels toxic. And until the rest of the world figures that out, we will have wonderful cultures, we will have okay cultures, and we will have toxic cultures. And so, we teach on the things that you can do in order to get there. But again, this word "why" is a really wonderful tool for us to not impose or implore leadership teams to consider, work with their surrounding leadership teams, and then get buy-in from everyone on it. If everyone agrees that that's the right mission, and if we help people take those steps, we will make more positive cultures, and maybe even the political culture will get more positive as well.
That'd be great. So, Colin, what do you do when you go into work with a group and you see that the whole culture is top down, is vertical? Now, the one thing I will say, having taught leadership for a long time at the university level, at that point, we really were about getting everybody buy-in. The one thing about I'm looking up, and this is that vertical culture, and here we have the leader with his, her, they have their vision that they're bringing to the organization. And again, about that trickle down. But how do you go about changing it to a more horizontal, vertical, only so the leader can really see out to the edges, get a big global view of what's really going on? But the grassroots level, it seems to me, needs to be shared leadership with everybody feeling they have a voice. And that might mean the most introverted person in the organization who has great ideas and is being left out. It may be a question of helping someone to tone down a little bit to not dominate. How do you do that? What do you do when you're going into a culture that's not, it's not friendly belonging to everybody. It belongs only to the leader. And then again, it has to be either buy-in or nothing.
Yes, marvelous question, Rita. I'd be interested in Don and your response to Rita, your response to your own question.
No, I'm not.
One of the things we've learned is there is value in making people pay for the work that you do with them, because if they pay enough, they'll tend to be more apt to actually apply the learnings or the actions that you're suggesting. So it really, I hate to say that, but it is important to ask people to pay a lot, because if they don't pay a lot, they tend not to value what they don't pay for. So that's one thing we tend to say, okay, before we get into this thing, we're about to charge you a lot of money. So if you don't want to do this from Jump Street, don't do it. That pushes a lot of people away, which, by the way, we're okay with. The second thing we say, here's the risk. we're going to come in here. We were very clear with them. Here's the risk. We're going to come in here. We're going to identify the issues. We're going to make suggestions on those issues. We're going to tell you how to take those suggestions and implement those. The risk is that it doesn't get done. You've spent now money and time, and that is not a good use of your resources. And by the way, we don't want to work with organizations that don't have major success after we leave. Right? Like
Right.
I don't want to work with someone who doesn't have great success after they're done working with me, because then they say, it charges a lot of money, don't really get much from it. That's like the worst thing you can have happen. So we're really, really adamant, Rita and Don, like, here, we're going to charge you a lot of money. We're going to make suggestions. I want to know why and how you're going to implement them once we make them. I'm not telling you what they are yet. I'm just saying we got. So then that's the first two pieces, and then the last piece, Rita and Don, we are asking a multitude of questions. You know, if this were to happen, how would it happen? And if someone pushed back, why would they push back? And if you establish an overall mission or why outside of what you, the leader, thinks is right, what would be your response then? These are the questions that work really well with leadership teams. It gets them thinking before they spend the money and the time. And I want them to understand those things. They are like the first steps, really the really important ones, because I don't want to take a penny from anyone or spend any time with anyone unless I'm sure that it's going to take hold, that the seeds are going to plant and ultimately deliver the results.
Okay, well, taking them out of it, in many of our organizations, we're not looking at the question of money, unless they're paying a whole lot to have consultants come in, or external program evaluators, or external teacher evaluators. So if we took that off the table and we were looking just at our integrity, our charisma, and our belief, then what do you do with that organization to, if the money piece isn't on the table, it's just about who we are and our why and our purpose moving forward. How would you go about working with that organization with the money out of the picture?
My answer to that one would be with that Don Connolly. That was funny. That was a Freudian slip. Don Connolly's an old financial services friend. If he's listening in, he'll be sure to be smiling knowing that I gave him a plug. He's a good connector on LinkedIn as well. But anyway, the Nick Saban story is what I was trying to say is really good one, because no one's making money. Well, Nick Saban's making money, but those players are trying to get to the place where they're making money, but they're buying in for the culture. They're buying in for all of that. And so what we would say is understand what each one of the constituents of the organization
There you go.
want and need, and how does that connect to the overall mission. So I'm going to ask those questions and make sure that we're all helping each other get our individual goals.
And modeling comes in there too, don't you think, Don?
Well, yeah, and I think coming back to why, that we somewhat drifted, but I think it was a great conversation and insight.
Yeah.
It's also now, because things change so quick, about timing of change, timing of whys. You're doing it more often because you're learning more, and by learning more, it makes you want to learn some more. A question will get an answer, will get another question in time. So I believe everything has to do, again, if we're on the same page as advancing upward, forward, better, and then also being able to help others along the way, or have collateral benefits from our direct initiatives is so important. But there's no time to guess, but there's so much necessary time to act. And I think that's why you're always better off getting as much buy-in. My background, 37 years of owning and being founder and CEO of my own companies. So I only had the company's best interest because I owned the company, right? And what was good for the company was good for me, and vice versa. So I would always, like I'm doing with this new project, sharing it with as many people that I think could benefit from it, but mostly contribute to it. And when you give people buy-in, they get commitment. When I did restructurings and turnarounds, I had to get creditors together, and people weren't that happy at times together, right? But it was all like, hey, this is an open kimono meeting. It's all on the table. Here's what we can do, and here's what happens if we don't do something. And I think when you take people's interest in mind,
There it
and
is.
I think the
Yeah.
Colin's point is, why are you here? What were
Yeah.
you wanting to get here or present here? And how does it
Mhm.
serve your better good and your future success? And if everybody would premise something with that, is this taking me closer to my goal or further away? Is this
Mhm.
going where I want to go, or am I going to have to drag somebody with me? And I think why is really comes down to association and disassociation. Why do I
Uh-huh.
want this instead of that? Why am I keeping that? I mean, you pick your clothes every day. You can only wear one pair of pants, right? And one shirt
Mm.
typically. But if you're carrying like all this stuff with you because whatever, that's the question someone's got to say is
Right.
and I think the biggest why is that because anybody, and that's why third party validation is so
Mhm.
good because people see things you forget are there, you take for granted, or you assume should be there. And until someone says, hey, that's not in the right order,
Yeah.
you got to
Right.
swap this with this, and now you're organized. So let's get to the comments because where every comment, there's a person.
Yep.
So anyways, I'll start with Nicole because she compliments Rita. Hi, hi, beautiful Rita. Leslie's here. Omar, a new look. Beverly, who's just knocking it out of the park, was a great time this week, and she's just unbelievably helpful, but mostly very insightful too. So thank you, Beverly.
Yes.
Glad to have you back. Marcello, I've never seen you before, but I'm always welcoming new guests. I bet, well, you're
Yeah.
from Atlanta and Omar. So that's two more tips. Glad to have you with us. Here we go with Leslie, knows that. Ambambola, our ambassador in Nigeria. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Network had been playing tricks on me. Christine Feedy says, ironically, I work for a toxic company that had great financial success and a healthier culture with less financial success. There has to be a common goal, yes, and the just right amount of pressure and accountability. And
Yeah.
Christine, she's a high flyer, real corporate individual, balancing so many balls. She's incredible. Omar says, good to see you. Let's
Mhm.
have something a little meatier. Ann Bambola says, I was about to ask, Don looks so cool without the hat. Well,
Yeah.
one vote.
Mm.
You never can depend on a poll of one, so we got two. So here we go with.
You'll have to do a hat poll, Don.
Yeah, I wasn't getting
I
any
like it.
premium from the hat people. These shows interact at a different level than comments and posts. It's people with people at the end of the day, and that's what it should be. There's too many people to get lost in the shuffle or just print
Right.
a piece of paper. When we
Right.
become alive with people who are alive, right at the moment, everybody is there to help or to learn or to teach. And that's the hour commitment you make. And I think Colin makes a great point. It's not, if you don't charge enough, people not only don't appreciate how good it can be, because there's so many people that charge more for something that's worth less, that it's unusual to get something for less that's worth more. But they also don't commit to it. What's easy to do is easy not to do.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's the time, it's the commitment, it's the interaction, and it's the ability for them to say, I'm not going to set and forget this. I'm going to take everything they have. I'm going to add everything I can to it to get it over.
Mhm.
Right? Why
Mm.
shouldn't everybody be all in? And it's for them.
Mhm.
Whoever's got a business or organization, they have it. They got to deal with it one way or another. You coming in from outside isn't your issue, right? It's what you're going to be able to bring to the inside for the future. And it's having that common, let's say, alignment, or it's not a fit. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And you shouldn't start
Yeah.
something that right at the beginning isn't a fit, knowing there's going to be things that come
Mhm.
up that no one could know that needs adjustment. So it's really, the beauty of age and experience is you can match so many things up with things in the past, and some things in the past are timeless. And I think if anything, there's a lag in relationship building, in
Mhm.
conversation, in discussion, versus spaghetti against a wall, go over automation. That's all good, but that by itself is not sustainable. It's not a respectable occupation to be in. If you're always picking up your tent and going to a new town. So anyway, Rita, getting back
I
to
have a question for Colin. I'd like to go back to the notion of your charity work that you do, because I wouldn't want anybody walking in late thinking that we're all about what we can charge for our services.
Mm.
The idea of the charity work, do you feel that major organizations today are cutting off some of that because of their belt tightening and streamlining of services? Do you think that that is going to happen, or will we still be seeing major organizations take on projects that they believe in? And I'm talking about a lot of pro bono work.
Um,
How do you balance it?
yeah, I do think that companies will continue to do it, maybe at a lesser level or be less apt to take on new projects, but they'll continue to stay connected to the ones that they are connected to. At least that's been my experience. Like if I take the brief hiatus in 2020 we had where everyone was really tightening belts with when COVID first hit. And then I go back to 2008, 9, 10, during that financial crisis we had there, companies stayed true to their core. They just didn't add more to them, didn't give more to them, or maybe even gave a little bit less to them, but still stayed connected with those. And one of the things connected to what Don just said and what you said, and I guess the overall show, and maybe a good question for the listeners. Um, I wonder if either of you and the listeners have seen Simon Sinek's um, talk on for leaders on why, and the core of it, that taking the whole hour presentation, boiling it down to 30 seconds is people don't really care that much about what you do. They don't even really care that much about how you do it. They care about why you do it and who you're doing it for. Like that, the whole why piece is Simon Sinek's whole point. So I wonder how many of the folks listening in have seen that, and how many of those figure like how often do I spend time in my discussions with colleagues, with clients on the why versus the what and the how. And when we spend more time on the why, people tend to get better connected to us in good markets and bad. And so Rita, like this
Right.
idea of, we take people who are leaving the military and help them make a successful entrance into the professional world, in particular in the financial services industry. People are really connected to that. People buy into that. Like we want these people at our firm. We think these people can, in fact, have a positive impact while us making a positive impact on their lives, and they can ultimately be the industry's next leaders. So people have stayed connected to that because I think the why is so clear, so like abundantly clear. We don't spend a lot of time on the what we do and the how we do it. We spend the why we do it, who we're doing it for, why it matters.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think that you'll always, I just finished a book called What's in It for Them. And,
Great.
that's exactly what it's about, because if you have the patience, if you have the confidence, knowing what you know, you don't need to go first at the table, right? You can let someone else start out. You can give somebody every opportunity to be everything they can, and then see if it fits for you. Too many people start negotiating before they even know what they're negotiating about, because they're just like that. It's like a competition instead of a collaboration. And I don't want to make money off of somebody. I want to make money with and for people. I don't want to take away. I mean, why would I put time and effort and see someone worse off for whatever I created or developed there?
Right.
And that's what's so important, because I've been with some people that I just, you got to pinch yourself. Like I said, I was a partner for 12 years with a billionaire, and we went and did things that you never could appreciate. And it was all over someone asking me if I was eating my cheesecake that one night. And that's how it started. I mean, the guy gave me an elbow. It was the end of the night. Said, "You gonna eat that cheesecake?" And I said, "No." And I gave him a glass of wine I never touched, and he struck up a conversation.
Yeah.
And I had known it when he first asked, but I found myself asking the question is, why would someone elbow you for a piece of cheesecake? You know, because at that point I could have said no and nothing would have happened, and you would have never known what you didn't find out that could have happened. But it was the generosity that just came
Right.
naturally. I didn't think, no, please, never touched it. Here's the wine. Help yourself. And that opened the door. And I've had other experiences like that, that people come into your life and you wonder how. But there is something to manifesting. And I think that's why comes in.
And synchronicity maybe too, Don.
And being in the moment and being responsive. I never set a plan beyond. I know my goal, but my daily plan changes with whatever's happening, whatever I'm learning, because that, the book writes itself at a certain point if you allow it, and so many people want to force, want to retain. They don't understand it's a flow. It's going with them or without them. And my feeling is, why not get way in front of something instead of a little in front and then have to keep getting a little in front? And I think that's what we're dealing with here going forward is mindset, attitude is wonderful. Without skill set, you're just going to be fumbling. And without application, you're just a smart person who's excited.
Yeah, right.
No completion, there's no fruition. I mean, I see on LinkedIn, a lot of planting, a lot of cultivating, no harvest. Back to planting, cultivate, more connections, more conversations. All that stuff is building a bigger whatever, but it's not what you need. I'll tell you a funny thing. When I started LinkedIn Lives a year ago every day, I had 35,000 connections. I've got 35,000 connections now. And the only difference is this doesn't reach out beyond to the general public. This is really 50, 100 people supporting each other, showing up every day and building with each other. And you know what? You don't want the noise from the 35,000 that aren't doing anything and aren't what you were. But before it was like I was picking up 1,000 here, 1,000 here, big numbers. Now it's relevancy, right? Now it's choosing the 5, 6, 7 people you want to align with and do it as you go. And I'll tell you a funny story for people who know Charles Caldwell. He's out in Hong Kong, great guy. He's the administrator of the number one English speaking school system out there. And he was here almost every night. And I'm talking 11 p.m. Hong Kong time is when the show starts. And then I hadn't seen him or heard from him. And then just last night, he says, I've been crazy busy. Sorry, I've been missing the show. I'm going to come back. And that's so gratifying because people who like what you are, who you are, and what you are always come back, and the people who try to restrain, are always scaring people away versus attracting people to them.
Well, you're talking manifesting now, Don, and that was something that I also wanted to talk about a little bit with Colin about the law of attraction and manifesting. And then also, both of you and all of us, to overcome barriers and those what nots.
Colin?
Why?
Yes. So give me a little bit more on that, if you will, Rita, please. A little bit more on the question.
Well,
the manifesting part.
I'm thinking, yeah, well, I truly believe in manifesting and law of attraction. And talk as an optimist, I know if I am feeling a little negative or I have had a very challenging day, I exit visa myself away from everybody. I have to recenter myself, whether it's through a little meditation or a positive book or listening to a positive TED Talk. I have to get myself recentered. And in order to deal with people that I'm meeting with or working with that are all into why they can't do something, everything is I can't. Why not? Why not? Well, I can't. Why not? I don't know. I just can't do it. So, how do we overcome that initial initial resistance? Yeah, here's the English teacher. The initial resistance to something that's new that may be panicking someone, and maybe for good reason. How do we overcome those barriers and get people at least giving a go? I don't like the word try. Yoda said do.
Yes, it was, I think Yoda said it. There is no try, only do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
But
it.
anyway, by the way, I have a podcast called 7 Minutes of Better Selling, and season 2 is all about how you motivate, or we call it how do you sell the hardest person in the world to sell, which is yourself, because we know ourselves so well, we're very hard to fool.
Yeah.
One thing we can do is if we believe in our why and we believe all the actions that we're taking help us get closer to solving for our why, we tend to take those actions. Now, I've seen that a lot personally. Like, I've had tough times in my life, just like everyone else has. And whenever I feel like that real difficult state I'm in, I say, okay, what's the why? Like, where am I going? I have to. So my answer to your question, Reed, is I ask myself the question, what's my why? And then I'm reminded of the steps I need to continue to take in order to get closer to it. And so
Mhm.
that's my answer to the question. It's one of those ones that I would believe if we have 30 people on there. I don't know how many people we have on the listening, Don, and the three of us, there might be 33 different answers. They're all slightly different, probably. But mine is I ask myself that question. As soon as I ask myself that question, that then takes me to, there's my desire. I'm willing to ask that question, and then the action to Nicole's equation that she has up on the screen.
Well, that's great. And I know we're coming up,
Mhm.
we are at top of the hour. And
Oh,
what
wow.
to,
Went
That's
this is
fast.
the
true.
fastest hour on LinkedIn, especially with all our technical early issues. But what it really comes down to is if you got a big enough why, you'll figure out the how to. And I think
Mhm.
that's important. And I think, the Nike slogan, just do it, is the best 3 words you can have no matter what you're thinking, because you're always
Right.
thinking, what do I do next? Who do I, all these different conditions instead of, okay, whatever it is, choose now, right? If you're going to choose, what do you do next? Then do it. Don't make a choice and not do it because you've done nothing except make yourself a little bit more confused. And the doing is the best part of it, right? Preparation is great, but when you finally get to play, when you finally get to see or do, and it's experiential, so I think you want to create a life that's of great experience, great joy. And if you're not there now, it tells you need to get moving towards where it is instead of
Mhm.
waiting for it to show up. And if it hasn't so far, kind of assume that's more than just a sign. That's probably so with that, I love the audience because they
Great
really
questions.
steer us, and they're insightful, and they're not just asking questions, they're really looking for answers, and they're looking to share answers with other people. And it's the knowledge share. If you get 1 or 2 or 3 new connections from active people, and just to refer back to my big connections, to my relevant connections, getting more connections without knowing who they are, if they're active, if they're interested, is just one step along the way when you can come to a place where people are actually doing something, being something, coming away with something. Because you don't come back the next day unless you got something the day before. You're only as good as what comes out of your mouth next. And that's just the way it is. So, with that said, I hope everybody thinks of why in a much different way, in a better way, and how it can be applied, and then how to Rita's wonderful questions and Colin's great answers. It can apply to organizations, it can
Right.
apply to anything. So I'll give Rita and Colin last words. Colin, I'll start. Well, I'll
No,
start with
Colin.
the guest. And what's your thought on why? What's your thought on the show being a newbie? And what last words do you want to share with the audience?
Mm. Well, before my last words, I would say ladies first. My mother taught me to be a gentleman, so if that's okay,
Well,
Reed, I put it.
oh, fine. I'm going to just mention one more thing we didn't have time to get to, and that's about over delivering. Now, I'm really aware that people are really, I don't want to say stressed out, but everybody has a lot that they're doing, a lot on the plate. And I just think of you, Colin, and the word always comes back that you over deliver. And that's something that I think is really important when we talk about our why, is what are we willing to make in that commitment? And for me, I attempt to always over deliver, but I can't expect that of others. So as we close out, how do we help keep it all in perspective so that we don't burn out other people because we keep moving forward so fast that we might be leaving people behind? They don't even have time to figure out what's next is always the question.
Mm. Well, one thing that I would love, one way I would love to answer that question is, I would love to get people to a place where, yes, you can. Like they'll say, I can't do it as fast as you or as much as you, or I can't. And I would say, I would love simply to say, yes, you can. Trust me, you can. But that's not reality. We know that people don't just react beautifully to that type of response.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that we would suggest with people to do is to connect with that purpose. Once you have your purpose, once you have your why, once that is established, then we take all of the steps that need to happen in order for you to achieve that why, and help people take those one step at each step at a time, and we make sure we organize them for them so how they don't get overwhelmed or burn out or into a position where this is just too much or too overwhelming. Is understand where you're going and then the steps it takes, and here's step one, behind that is step two, and then and help them take step by step. Makes people feel really good. Progress makes people feel really, really purposeful. And then my next thought would be thank you. Thank you to both of you for having me, for inviting me, and for having me on here. I love the show, love the format, love the discussion and the conversation. To your point, Don, just have a conversation, and the audience to the right here offer some wonderful comments, questions, ideas, thoughts, and answers. Just as you mentioned, so I thought that was great. I hope to connect with more of you on LinkedIn. So I hope you'll find me on LinkedIn. I won't be able to find all of you, but I hope you do, and I hope we can connect on that. And I wish all of you a great selling day.
Well, thank you so much. You were a wonderful resource for everybody today. Always a new face helps too. But, just having people understand there are the answers out there if you know how to ask the right whys to the right people. So, whatever you're going through, someone's already gone through, and someone's already probably figured out a better way, if not a different way. And it's all about uh, blending perspectives, answers. And one answer may just give you enough to get another question. But the point is, by asking, there's always hope that an answer can be there, especially the one you've been searching for. So, with that said, come back in 23 hours. We'll do it all over again. I'll tell you really quick who's going to be here. Tomorrow will be Kelly, Jill, JYL, new person, wonderful person, has foundations and all things she's doing out there. Kinga is going to be here Friday. Leslie Nydick, and Melissa Cohen are here Saturday. And then Sunday is me and Leslie Flowers. And then it just gets better as next week goes on. So again, thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody's time and thought, and it makes for such a wonderful show. And with that, take care. Have a lovely day. Be safe.